it looks like it's 6:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Allison Lockridge. I'm the College and Career Center counselor. We have a great group of seniors here with us this evening. And today we're going to talk about the college application process. As juniors are winding down for the end of the year, we want to make sure that you're set up for success for the summer and going into the fall with the application process. And we thought, what better way to hear about it than from current seniors who really went through this process themselves this time last year. So I'm going to moderate. This is being recorded. There are a lot of conflicts tonight. I know this is a super busy time of year, so we will be sending out the recording. We will have plenty of time for questions. I do have questions that were given to me in advance as well. But if you do have questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and I will monitor those at the end. But we're going to go ahead and turn it over to our panelists, and they'll introduce themselves. And each person's going to talk for a few minutes on the college, on really like the application process, tips on writing essays, managing the stress in the process, and really narrowing your college list, which is where you should be right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Catherine and let her introduce herself first.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. So my name is Catherine O'Brien, and next year I'll be going to Vanderbilt University, and I'm going to be majoring in neuroscience on a pre-med or pre-nursing sort of track. So there were a lot of factors that led me to choosing to go to Vanderbilt, and just like in general, when I was looking at what colleges I was sort of interested in. So I definitely was factoring location a lot. The majority of the colleges I did end up applying to were in the Midwest or the South. I also definitely looked at size of the school. I didn't exactly want to go to a really small school or really big school. So somewhere about like 7,000 to 15,000 undergrads was kind of where I was aiming to go to. I also was definitely looking for, like when I was looking at scholarships and stuff, just depending on each school. And in total, I applied to around believe it was like around 20 schools. But I ended up withdrawing from 10 of them since I did get accepted into Vanderbilt early decision 2. So I withdrew like about half of my applications in February. So one thing that I would definitely do again in the process would be for supplemental essays, you usually have to write maybe if you apply to like 20 schools, it's probably going to be around 30 to 45 essays, which is definitely a lot and very overwhelming. So what I kind of did was create one essay for if it was asking like why us, which is a very common prompt. And I kind of made an essay that I could work around and reuse for different schools. So this really helped take off some of the stress of writing all those essays, since I did have kind of an essay that I could alter. So in the end, when I could have written like 45 essays, I only wrote about like 6 to 10, which definitely took off a lot of pressure about writing the supplements. And then one thing that I regretted in my process is waiting until the fall to write my Common App essay, just because I should have probably utilized the summer before my senior year to write my essay, just because in the fall, there's so much stuff you're doing. It's the beginning of your senior year. You're like trying to get all your college stuff together. And it's easier to ask teachers for help at the beginning of the year than in like mid to late October when you're about to submit all your applications. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Gabe.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabe Costin. Next year, I will be attending Indiana University. I will be majoring in finance and international business. So some factors that influenced where I was applying and why I chose Indiana were I kind of wanted a bigger school, and I think half the schools I applied to were public schools. So that was kind of something that I wanted. I wanted like a big social life, a lot of stuff going on. I wanted to go to sports games every weekend, and as well as the cost was kind of a lot cheaper for public schools. So that was part of my decision as well. In total, I applied to 13 schools, and what made me decide on Indiana specifically was its great business program, specifically like the Kelly School is a great business school, as well as the social life at Indiana, the size, and its location in the Midwest was something that I really liked. Something I would definitely do again would probably be kind of the same. I would form my college just the same way. I formed my college just through visiting schools, and that kind of gave me an idea of all the schools I wanted to go to. I knew that each school that I applied to was a school that I could see myself at, because I had seen these schools already. And one thing that I regret in my process was not adding enough targets. I feel like I could have definitely added some more, and that was one flaw with my process. So I guess I'll Izzy, I think you're next.
Hi, my name is Isabel Goldfarb. I will be going to Indiana University as well. I am a business management major, and I'm planning to minor in psychology as well. Some factors that went into my decision was that I was definitely looking at big schools. I applied to, I want to say 13 or 14 schools, and they were all big schools, sports. Most of them were in the Midwest. Location was a factor. The farthest school that I applied to was in Texas, so I drew the line kind of right down the country, because I wanted to be at least like a drive away. I mean, Indiana's about 13 hours, which is manageable, but I'm doing business, so I definitely wanted a school that was known for, or at least like had good opportunities, good resources, and nice networking, which Indiana does offer. And something that I think I did well in with my process is my procrastination. I usually am a big procrastinator and I leave everything to last minute, but I think that with this, I took it very seriously, and I started in June with my essays and everything. And then I like took out time each week to write essays, and I dedicated time to my applications and like making my list and so on. Something I regret doing is applying to a bunch of pointless schools that I know that I would never see myself at. I think it was just a little bit overwhelming knowing that like you might not like end up in every school or get accepted to every school. So I think that I was just like nervous and randomly like throwing out applications here and there. So knowing that I wasn't going to end up at schools anyways, I think I would have saved me about a bunch of time and effort writing essays and stuff like that. But yeah, who am I passing it on to next? Andrew, is that you?
Yeah. Hi guys, my name's Andrew Berkovich. I'll be attending Northeastern in the fall, and I'll be majoring in a combined major of economics and business administration. For me, I would say the biggest factors of choosing Northeastern was its location and really the city. My route was more towards cities that were in the city, but still had more of like a green lawn environment, more like a traditional college, but a mix of like city life as well, which I felt was a big, which was what Northeastern had. I was looking at other schools like Georgetown and GW and those types of schools that were more in the city, and they had a range of different sizes. You know, some were larger, some were smaller. But I would say my biggest factor was being closer to city and having the opportunity to have like different activities in the city. I would say I applied to around 10 schools. Northeastern was my ED, so I would have applied to a couple more. But fortunately, I was able to get into Northeastern straight away. And like I said, Northeastern for me, I felt like they were a right choice for me. They weren't strictly an academic school. You know, they looked at more stuff besides academics, you know, your personality, you know, like your sports, your clubs, what you do. And academics, although academics is a really important thing for Northeastern, it's not the only thing that they look at during the application process. So that felt that made me feel better about going there. It felt like I was going to be really connected with that school. One thing I would do better, do again is similar to Gabe. I felt like the schools that I looked at and I picked really fit who I am. And I think I've also did a decent job of visiting the schools. I feel like the more schools you're able to look at and explore, the better you are to figuring out which one works the best for you. Because on paper, a school might look good and like you might think, oh, I'll fit in perfectly. But then if you actually go view it, your mind might be, it might be completely different to what you thought. One thing I regret was, I would say I kind of procrastinated a lot, although I started early. And although I started early, I kind of pushed stuff off. I did little by little, which worked, but I think the more that you get done, the easier the process is, which now I know if I could have done it again, I would have not procrastinate as much and get out of the way quicker. Yeah. To you,
Okay.
Catherine. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks everybody. So I think Catherine's going to start us off talking a little bit about a timeline.
Yeah, so I'm going to start by just talking about the application timeline and kind of like general tips just throughout my own like experience and also just hearing about other people's experiences as well. So at this point, it's like the end of your junior year. And what I would definitely recommend is scheduling your ACT or SAT if you haven't taken it already, or if you're not happy with your score yet, you definitely want to get that out of the way as soon as possible. Because you don't want to wait until the fall to take your ACT or SAT that you want to submit to your school if you decide to send your scores, just because you don't want to put all that pressure on yourself. So definitely make sure you schedule your standardized tests way ahead of time. Along with that, you also want to make sure you ask your teachers for recommendations now instead of waiting until the fall, because most of your teachers do not want to be writing your recommendation in like September, October. They'd rather have the summer to write it. Also, it's just easier just for you as well, so you know you have everything all lined up. For teacher recommendations, I would definitely recommend getting a recommendation from like a STEM teacher and then one from like maybe your English or history teacher. That's what I did, and I feel like that worked out really well. Additionally, so now it's the end of the year and moving into the summer, you definitely want to make sure you're doing some virtual tours just to see what kind of schools you're interested in, as well as in-person tours if that's possible. During the end of my junior year, as well as the summer before my senior year started, I was doing a lot of touring with my family just to see what kind of schools I wanted to go to. As I mentioned before, a lot of the schools I liked were in the Midwest or the South. So that required some planning ahead of time just because we were flying out to see those schools. You obviously don't need to see every school in person. I saw a lot, but I didn't see like every single school that I applied to, because a lot of the times I feel like you can definitely get like the general vibe of a school just by looking at their virtual tours. So you should be able to find like for whatever college you're interested in, they'll probably have like a virtual like info session or something like that. This is also really helpful because some schools do track your interest. So I know if you look up online a specific school or university, you can just see if they factor your interest into your application. And just to continue with interest, in the fall, Miss Lockridge has a lot of like the college reps will come and visit. So I definitely recommend signing up for those, because you can ask like certain college reps like questions about their school. It is kind of similar to the like online like info session, but it's great to see like a representative in person, because you can like get their card, send them an email letting them know that you enjoyed their visit, things like that. Also over the summer, as I mentioned before, I really regretted not writing my Common App essay over the summer. So I would definitely recommend trying to get some of your essays out of the way, even if they're not the final version. In the fall, you can definitely ask teachers for help, Miss Lockridge for help, your guidance counselor. So many teachers and guidance counselors are willing to help you out to make sure that your essays look good and everything like that. For me to keep like organized during this time, because obviously the applications are a lot, I made a spreadsheet with each of my schools, what supplements I need to get done, when I need to submit everything by, because there's just so many individual steps that you have to make sure you complete, whether that's sending scores, making sure your teacher recs are uploaded and everything. So also going along with that, there's a really short time period between when your AD decision gets released and when you have to finish all your applications for your regular decision schools. So usually around like December 14th to December 16th, if you choose to ED or REA to a school, you'll find out your decision. And if you didn't get a decision you are obviously happy with, you only have like 2 weeks to make sure that you submit all your regular decision schools. So I definitely recommend having all that like set out ahead of time. I did not get into the school I REA'd to, so I had very limited time to get in my early decision 2 application, which was to Vanderbilt, as well as all my regular decision applications. So definitely make sure to get everything done ahead of time so you're not stressed out. Also, because it is like the holiday break and teachers may not respond to your emails as fast if you need essays reviewed. So you just want to get everything really done ahead of time. So yeah. I think I'm passing it on to Gabe now, who's going to be talking about developing your college list, as well as how you're kind of the factors that go into making your final decision.
All right, thank you. So yeah, I will be going over developing your college list and as well as making a final decision. So the first thing is make sure to maximize your list and not apply to colleges you don't like. This is something that I really emphasized during my college process because as I said before, I formed my list through visiting colleges. And if I can give you all like one piece of advice, I'd say make sure every college on your list is a college that you can see yourself at and that you're actually going to enjoy your time at for the next. This is a college you're going to be at for the next 4 years of your life. So if you know you're going to hate it there, then why would you apply there, if that makes sense? So I would really recommend making sure that each school you apply to is one that you can see yourself at and that you'll be happy at. And don't waste time on a school that you know you're going to hate, if that makes sense. The next thing is focusing on adding a bunch of targets, which is something that I did not do during my college process. I had my safeties very much figured out. I applied to 3 safeties, which worked out very well for me. However, I applied to way more reaches than I should have and not enough targets, which resulted in me not getting into schools, not getting into as many schools as I thought I would. And this goes hand in hand with not really relying on trends in the college book. Well, they can be helpful. I was told that, oh, I'm gonna get into this school, I'm gonna get into that school. I didn't get into those schools, whereas some people told me, oh, you're never gonna get into the school, why even apply there, why bother? And I did get into that school. And for example, I'll use the school as actually say, I was told I was never going to get into Northeastern. I ended up getting into Northeastern, although obviously I didn't end up going there. It kind of shows that no one knows. These things really change year to year. No previous year is going to be the same as this year. Next year is going to be completely different. I mean, especially with COVID, I know this one ending now, but that's something that kind of threw everything off the wrenches. So you can't know for sure what's going to be happening, and the trends, don't look into it too much. There is something there, I mean, but you shouldn't just rely on that. It's not 100%. Talking with guidance counselors, especially about their suggestions. This is something that I did during my process. I especially take advantage of college nights. I think that's normally during September, October, I think, where hundreds of colleges come to the student center. And I went to go talk to my guidance counselor and ask for some recommendations on schools that she thought would be good for me. So I kind of gave her some preferences, like the size of the school I wanted, if I wanted public/private, location, and she put together a list of like 10 to 15 colleges that maybe I should look at. And this really helped my list. I mean, I probably took a good 3 or 4 of those off my list out of my 13 schools. So that was a good chunk. And that was something that was invaluable to me. as well as getting some help with my essays. I know my guidance counselor just helped make sure that they were more unique for that college, which was really helpful. And the last piece of advice I have, which is honestly probably the most important in my opinion, is try not to get wrapped up in the names of colleges and rankings. I know if you haven't yet already looked at it, you probably will at some point look at the US News college rankings like I did. While I won't say that they're completely useless, because they're not, don't take them as the end all be all, because they're not. I got very, very fixated on them, but just because one school is above another school, first of all, does not mean that that school can be better than the other school in your specific major, but also and like the way that you'll enjoy that school if you end up going to one over the other. You might like one way more, and you might have a great experience at one, even though it's ranked slightly lower than a different one. So don't take the rankings as 100%, just like you shouldn't rely on friends in the college book. Really formulate your own opinions about the schools and make sure that the schools that you're applying to are ones you can see yourself at and be happy at for the next 4 years. So yeah, that is mine. I think, Izzy, you're next doing essay writing, right?
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about essay writing. I think in general, this is probably one of the most important parts of the whole process, just because it's really your only chance to like show who you truly are and differentiate yourself from like the other 600 people in your grade. I would say like your activities list, you could say you play soccer, or you could swim, or you are in a certain club. And you can do a sentence blurb about that, but all in all, like that doesn't really say who you are and why you are the way you are. So I think that your essay, it's a really important time to like hone in on like details and be very specific, and show like a side of you that your application doesn't share. Like for me, for example, like my activities list, I'm like talking about the activities I'm in, sports, clubs, whatever, but like my essay was about food, or like ravioli, to be specific. Like it's very like it's a very specific thing that you definitely want to pay a lot of attention to and don't take lightly. But also it's important to have fun with it. And moving on to the next little point that I have, I would say definitely find something niche to talk about, because you are in a grade where you do have a lot of people, and it's nice, but in this part, like in this idea, it's a little bit more stressful. So I think that finding something that's very specific to you is definitely key to writing your essays, and definitely start brainstorming early on. I know that like my sister's going through this process now, and I know that she has like a notes app on her, or like a notes list on her notes app, and she's just, when something comes to her mind, she'll just like do a little tally mark and be like, oh, this might sound interesting, or like this might be cool to like expand on later. She started this like last year when I was going through the process. So I think that having like a little mental note, so you're not overwhelmed with like a million ideas right when you're actually like opening the doc to start writing, it's nice to have like things to like look back on. Moreover, I think that planning is really important. So I think you need to, or not need to, but I think it's important to not go into writing right away. I think you need to do like figure out a little bit about yourself and like what you like think is important to you, because obviously you know that, but I think trying to I don't know what the word is, but trying to like write that all on paper and really write like a nice essay on it is easier said than done. So I think that brainstorming and like writing a bunch of details out and like doing some like exercises that you can like look up online. Like I know that my guidance counselor sent me like a bunch of like little exercises that I could do to kind of help me. And then along with that, I think that it's important to make sure that when you're writing your essay, like if someone who knows you really, really well was reading it, I think that like the best compliment that you could have after reading your essay is that like that is so you, or like you could say like that sounds like them after reading their essay. Whereas like if you wrote something very, very like bland, or not bland, but very like not in depth, like you would have no idea that it's you compared to like the person sitting next to you. So you want to know that your essay is so like is very uniquely you. Moving on, I think that it's really important to start early, like specifically in the summertime. I know I started in June, and I think that was a good time to start. I think most people also start around that time because summer is really busy. And you kind of just want to be outside. It's first getting nice out. Like you want to be with your friends, you want to hang out, you want to go to the beach, whatever. But you like will try to find excuses just like me to push it off, or say you can write tomorrow, or you can do whatever you have to do like the next week or something like that. But summer flies by and time flies by, and November 1st will be here before you know it. So I think that if you start writing earlier, then it leaves you time for your social life, your family, whatever, and not having to give up things that you actually want to do for your essay, which is obviously no fun. So starting early makes you less stressed, which is like the most important thing. I think that starting early left me less stressed than most of my friends. And I remember I was in my junior year. And this girl, I'm on the swim team, and this girl in the locker room, she was saying that 3 days before November 1st, which is when the college applications were due, she had to write her Common App. She left it till like the last week in October, and she was freaking out, and I just like was freaking out for her because it just sounded so stressful. So I think that starting early really like took a weight off of my shoulder and made me like kind of take a step back and realize that it is overwhelming, but it's not as bad as people make it out to seem. Another point that I have is reusing your essays. That's like probably like the number one time saver ever. I wrote my Common App. I probably wrote, most colleges are going to ask you like why this school, and I wrote one essay for that. I wrote like one solid essay that I could tweak. Sometimes they're different lengths, but I wrote like a solid essay that I could literally copy out the name of the school, add the name of the school in, and then I had like a section at the end where I would like write specific details. I would change it, but then I had like a solid outline where I could reuse it and like use that as my base. So I'm not restarting from scratch every single time that I have to write a new essay. And that definitely left things that like weren't like left things not as stressful. And I definitely recommend doing that for your safety schools. If you want something to be like very like unique for like your top schools, like by all means, like write your own essay. But I don't know, I think that like for my safety schools, I found myself just like kind of using that outline a lot. So that will save you time. Also, it's really important to use your resources. I know that I used Miss Lockridge many, many times. She's amazing. Most people say use your guidance counselor, but I didn't really connect with my guidance counselor on that level. So I sought out other resources like Miss Lockridge. And I remember going to her countless times, looking at her to edit and advice and all that good stuff. So that's really helpful. But then again, I would say that it's really important to not ask so many people for like editing and like revising tips, because once you start getting like 6, 7, 8 people to edit your essay, it's not going to sound like you anymore. And that's like the whole point of this to begin with. So I definitely say to keep it to like a tight knit of people that you trust. And also not talk about it with your friends, because once your friends start talking about it, that's when you get stressed. And I did find that most people did keep it to themselves, the essay part specifically. I know that college is like a big topic of conversation this year, and that's when it gets really stressful. So trying not to talk about it, especially like your essay in general, did help me. And then I don't know, that's kind of it. So I think I'm gonna move it on to Andrew.
Yeah, and So I'm going to be talking about managing your stress and specifically with the applications. And I would say these times are probably like one of the most stressful times, like this is like what's going to show where you're going to go after your senior year, and a lot's going on with doing the applications and then your school life and then your personal life. And I think the one thing that you should take away from all of this is that it's better to start earlier. If you start over the summer, maybe even now would be great. You'll have less things to do when you get back to school. And some of you might have uh, a really stressful um, course load, taking a lot of APs, or you have a lot of clubs, or you're part of the NHS where you have community service obligations to fill, like your time for other things start going to other places in August, September, October. And so if you are able to start earlier, your stress is going to be, you're going to have less stress overall with your applications. And also, don't do what I did, where even though you started earlier and started thinking about it, don't push stuff off. Um, you know, I felt like I was kind of rushing towards the end with my essay, with editing, making sure it's good, as well as secondary um, supplements. I would say start earlier, start thinking about it earlier, start doing it, and then your stress will be less. Um, I would also say firstly use like your resources. I know a lot of people, when I was talking about the process, tried hiring like tutors or people who would help with essay writing, and I got really worried and stressed out that I was the only person who like didn't find anyone. It's like end of July, early August, still haven't found someone to help me give advice for my essay, help me write it. And, I was kind of freaking out, like, oh, my essay is not going to be that great. But realistically, I felt I had a friend, a coworker who specialized in looking at essays outside the summer season. And she helped me out looking at the essays, but I lean more on my guidance counselor to help. You know, I would also, if you're the parent or if you're the kid watching this Zoom, um, use your parent. Your parent knows you a lot and can help you with a lot of the application process. Hopefully they went through the process and they know a little bit about it, and they can give you tips and tricks on managing what essay to do, what you should do to like minimize your stress. And then I also, in May, I think Miss Lockridge does a workshop around the essay writing, and I remember getting a code for Google Classroom where there's a lot of different resources which I recommend using. You can either use that Google Classroom. I don't know if Miss Lockridge could give out the link to it maybe at the end of the Zoom. But you could also search up. I know there's a couple of people on YouTube or other places that like specialize in like essay writing or know some, and that could be useful if you don't have like really a single person or like a tutor that could help you write your essay. I know like having a person like that definitely helps you, because I guess it's like they help you organize your thoughts, and they help you organize the plan of action as you're going through the process. Like that friend that I had told me, "Oh, do this first, talk about this," or, maybe, if you get stuck on your main essay, work on a different essay, stuff like that. Um, Also, similar to what Izzy said earlier, you don't need to really talk about your college process. I know, like, it can get overwhelming to hear what other people are applying to, or if they got into a place, or like different stuff. I would say I got a little bit overwhelmed when I heard, other people were ahead of me, or like, you know, had things, I guess, a little bit easier, since they had a tutor or whatever. I would focus more on yourself and try not get too much pressure around this whole process. You might not get to into the first school that you pick, but I think if you make a detailed personal list of schools that you truly think you can see yourself being there for the next 4 years, it doesn't really matter which school you get into, because if you make that list really connected and personal to you, any school that accepts you out of that list is like a win for you. So I would look at the positives um, around all these application process. Like, think, oh, don't think about the negatives, and think about the positive. Like I said before, just use all the resources around you. I know a lot of teachers at the school that will help you. Your guidance counselor, Miss Lockridge, and then I know some teachers go out of their way, and can look at your essays as well if you're close to them, and ask nicely. Um, and yeah, I would say, don't overthink the process. Start it early. Use your resources. The school offers a lot of it. You can search. You could use the Google Classroom. You can search online. And I wouldn't fixate over, like, how well the school, like what Gabe was saying earlier. Like, you don't need to fixate on the rankings. Fixate more on what the school life is. A your college, I would say, is more of growing your personality, rather than just getting a physical diploma. A lot of people just think about it as, oh, I need this diploma to get a job, but it's also, you're going to meet new people, you're going to um, grow more. So I wouldn't stress too much about the whole process. But yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. That was super informative. I would love to make just a couple quick comments, and then we'll open it up for questions, if that's okay. So first of all, with the college essay, so if you weren't able to attend one of my workshops last week, I do have one more workshop which I will email out, and that's going to be Tuesday morning before school. But if you can't attend that, I will also email a link to my Google Classroom, which is where I basically put all of my favorite resources in, so you can definitely have access to that. I think Izzy made a really good point about the supplemental essays, and really trying to be able to reduce the amount of writing as much as possible. One of my favorite resources, which you may have heard me talk about already, is Ethan Sawyer, the college essay guy. He's just has tons of free resources. But one of the great free resources that I love about him is what he calls the super essay. So you can just search on his website, free resources, super essay. And it's the concept of looking at your supplemental essays and trying to find a super essay that you're going to be able to reuse for multiple essays, if it's not necessarily that why us essay. because there definitely will be overlap in questions. So I definitely encourage you to look at that. Andrew, I really liked how you commented on, using teachers, me, your counselor, where there's plenty of resources in the building. I often hear from students that it helps to have like scheduled appointments, whether that's once a week, every other week, but just it gives you some accountability if you know you have a meeting with your English teacher or your history teacher or your counselor, and you have to have a draft done by that time. It just makes you a little bit more accountable and, keeps you on a closer timeline. And lastly, if you do want support over the summer, we do have the essay workshop. It's close to the end of August before school starts. It's 2 weeks. There are still spaces left in that. Again, when I email the recording, I'll email just all follow-up links as well, but that could be a good resource if you want some like structured support. It's very reasonably priced. We have a couple excellent English teachers and counselors that run that from the high school. And then lastly, just to touch upon what some points that Catherine made about the timeline, I would definitely recommend, you still have another solid week and a half, recommend scheduling a meeting with your counselor before you leave for the year. Even if you don't know what to ask, you can go in and just say, you know what, this is where I'm at, like what else should I be doing? But you can be talking about narrowing your college list. What should I be focused on in the summer? There's plenty of things that you could talk about. So even just getting at least one time with your counselor before you leave would be great. And I would definitely recommend making sure everything is in order for your recommendations. So not only asking your teachers if you haven't already, but many teachers will have you fill out a questionnaire. And if they don't have you fill out a questionnaire, we do have a generic one on our website, on the Greenwich High School website under school counseling. And it really just asks a lot of questions that will help your teacher write a stronger letter. So you can include some anecdotes, things that you really remember from the class, some discussions that you found really valuable, and that can make for a stronger letter. So those are things to get out of the way before the end of the year. Your counselor requires a brag packet that many of you may have already done, but if not, you should definitely do that. And then you can ask for your informal recommendations, which those go right to your counselor and help your counselor write your counselor's letter. So those can be from like a club advisor, a coach, another teacher, an employer, and students usually ask 2 or 3. But again, it could be great to get that out of the way before the end of the year. You can always add one in the fall if you have like an employer over the summer. And then lastly, you're going to need to invite your teachers on SCORE. We did go over that in an advisory last month. But if you haven't done that yet or you're not sure how to do that, that's a perfect thing to be checking in with your counselor before the end of the year. And again, I'll send those directions as well. But your teacher letters get submitted through SCORE, so you have to invite them so they can upload it. And it's definitely okay to do that in September, but as you're hearing, there's definitely a lot of pieces in this application process. So if you can get some of it done before you leave, it's just going to make your life a little easier down the line. Okay, well, let's open it up for questions. So we've got a couple questions in the chat, but why don't we start with how did you involve your parents or guardians in the process? Anybody want to take that?
What was
I
the
can take
question?
that.
How did you involve your parents or guardians in the process?
Yeah, I can take that. So, like I said, I was really stressed out of like finding a person who could like help me write my essay. And so I had that person, but I did go to my parents to help, like read over my essay and help me write it. My recommendation, if you're going to go to your parents, is don't have them write it. That they can give you pointers, but it should be you who's writing it. It's they college people are reading your essays really want to hear your voice compared to other people. But I definitely used my parents a lot, reading it over, asking, is this event in my life, substantial to write in this essay? Or like, I also asked, like how, what was their college process for them, and like, what they did. And yeah, like I mixed between my guidance counselor, that friend, and my parents when writing my essay.
I have something to add to that. I think that for me personally, my parents were a major help towards the end of the process more than the beginning of the process, because I think the beginning of the process, it's just like stressful and you're kind of just trying to figure everything out. So towards the end, when everything's kind of calming down, picking like a school is when my parents like really helped me out. And like my mom was very like ahead of me. Like I have a lot of emails that I just don't open a lot of the time. So like she would like kind of like be aware of that and kind of give me advice, or like let me know like if I have to be on like a certain Zoom call, or I have to go to a certain event, or like the college night. Like I feel like they were very like ahead of me in terms of that. So definitely like talk to your parents and communicate with them, so they can help you out with stuff like that. But I would say with your essays, maybe it's better, or some parts of the process, I would say it was better for me to kind of focus on like my school resources and like my tutor and like stuff like that more than my parents, because when they're giving me advice based on their college process, which was so long ago. So I think that like talking to people that are like in the process now and understand what it's like now was more useful for me, like my essays, for example, or like what schools, like the list that I should be making, stuff like that. Like I think that they came in as a big help towards the end.
I'll also add 2 cents about that. I know probably many of you have heard that I have a junior of my own going through this process. So first time going through it as a parent. I do think it can be helpful, maybe not for everybody, but to involve your parent in the brainstorming part of your essay. You know, we know our kids the best, and just coming up with like little special moments, whether or not it ends up being a topic or not. But I know what I did for my son was just, just emailed him like a bunch of like special moments that I remembered of him, and he could take or leave it. But it can be, I think, helpful like in terms of the brainstorming, not necessarily the nuts and bolts of the essay. But yeah. Okay, so another question that came through the chat, and also we had in advance, was around is it okay to like apply undecided? Do I need to know what I want to major in? And is that really important?
I can take that. So, so I'm reading, it says, do most kids know what they will major at this point? And for that, I'll say, it depends. Like a lot of my friends did know what they want to do, but I also have a bunch of friends who didn't. So I wouldn't say most. I'm not completely sure, but I don't know how big of a deal it is. I mean, you definitely don't have to put a major down. You can definitely say you're undecided. That's completely okay. A lot of schools will ask like if you have an interest, instead of asking what you want to major in directly. And so for that, just say what you're interested in. But also there are some schools that have something called direct admit, which means that, for example, Indiana, when you're applying to Indiana, you're applying to the school as a whole. And then once if you get accepted into Indiana, you then, depending on your academics and all that, you either get automatically admitted to if you apply as a certain major, you automatically get admitted to that school. So like the Kelley School of Business, you get automatically admitted as a business major. But you also have to have certain grades for that. So if you don't get into that specific school, you're then in the school, but you might have to apply into that major later, if that makes sense. So it depends. So if you're saying, do they need to say something even if they're undecided? It depends maybe on the school, but also it's not a big deal. Don't think I applied to any school that said you have to pick a major going in. Most schools will most schools that I found would say that you declare a major your sophomore year, although that's not a rule for all schools. So really it depends on the school, but from what I saw, it was really okay to apply undecided. Most schools were very flexible about that. So yeah.
I also know,
Diane,
oh, sorry. I also know people that like had no idea what they want to major in, but they had maybe 3 options. So like most schools probably give you like a first choice, second choice, third choice. So that like gives you the option to kind of like explain. Like I know for one of the schools I applied to, I 2 of my supplements were why do you want the first choice major? Why do you want the second choice major? So it kind of gives you a chance to explore like both. Also, someone else that I know called even like in like 2 weeks before their application was supposed to come back to them, and they changed their major. So you can, if you're not sure, I feel like colleges can be very flexible. Yeah.
and yeah, to add on, it's like I think for a lot of schools they allow you to have a year or two. You know, I think it's like a lot of schools have it up to your sophomore year of college. You can be undecided or not have like a definite choice of what path you want to go down. So, you know, you could be undecided, go your freshman year, and then, you know, you can start figuring it out, you know, and like Izzy said, there a lot of schools can probably be flexible on changing your major. Also, I from one of my schools, I was planning on maybe going to an international school, so like a school in Europe, instead of going yeah. So I planned on going to school in Europe, and I think if you're planning to go to school internationally, you have to choose your major when you apply. I know in Europe that's the case. I don't know if Canada or like other places are similar, but I know if you're planning on applying to school in Europe, the process is a little bit different. And I know that you have to pick your major when you apply because you directly go to the school of that major. So if I'm doing a business major, I have to directly pick a major. Um, and they don't really do like those general classes. So yeah.
Okay, let's maybe take 1 or 2 more. What are some ways that you can demonstrate interest in the process? I know Catherine had mentioned that briefly, but maybe Catherine, I don't know if you want to take that.
Yeah, I can take it. So I can just use also like some of my personal experiences. So for example, I applied to Tulane Early Action, and they're a school that's really big on showing interest ahead of time. So I did get admitted to Tulane for early action, and I did also receive a scholarship. And I think one of the reasons that I was admitted is because I applied to scholarships ahead of time before I even found out my decision. And I feel like this just shows the school that you're really interested and that you'd be willing to go and everything like that. As well as Tulane did have in-person rep visits, and I signed up through like on their website to receive emails from them. So that's how I found out about all that, as well as there was an in-person rep visit at GHS. So I think just attending like in-person rep visits as well as doing like online virtual tours is super helpful. Another thing is before I found out any of my decisions for like early decision and also early action, I would send an email to all my colleges just showing them that I had continued interest, as well as like asking them a question. I know personally I'm really interested in research, so I would write them an email asking about like the research opportunities or asking them about like a professor that teaches there, just to show that you're very interested. So I feel like those are probably the best ways. You just want to make sure you're like signed up for their email list and you're writing to the reps and you're writing to their admissions counselors directly, just because this is a really good way to show that you'd be like interested, and there's definitely a possibility that you would attend if you were admitted.
Sorry. Yeah, and just to clarify what the rep visits are in case you're not familiar with that. So in the early fall, basically from September through October, we host admission representatives from various schools. We usually have close to 100 that will come over the 2 months. And they basically give like a little info session in the College and Career Center. So if a college is on your list, you should definitely sign up. If you don't have it open, you can ask your teacher in advance. But the admissions representative that comes to the high school is the person that's actually reading your application. So it's a very, very important way to show interest. Usually that person is also at college night behind the table. Again, the representative for our high school. So that can be really valuable. And then I think just one other thing, Catherine, I felt like you did really well is connected with specific professors on campuses. And, that could be something you could tie into a supplemental essay. If it's not a professor and you're really into music, maybe it's, somebody in the music department, or you're really into dance, maybe somebody in the dance department. But that could be more substance that you're including in your letter of recommendation and potentially communication with the admission representatives. And I think we're almost at time here, but I did just want to take a couple quick minutes to answer a couple of these last questions. One is, how do you determine if you should send your SAT or ACT scores? So really important to look at the median for each school that you're applying to. Does your test score fall into that median from this school year? If so, there shouldn't be any reason why you're not submitting it. But if you're below the median, you are definitely better off applying test optional. If you have any questions about it, it's definitely something you can run by your counselor, you can run by me, you can ask an admissions counselor. But the averages are very easily accessible now. So you're really just looking at, do you fall within the median range? And most students are applying with scores to some schools and not to others. But, some students are applying test optional everywhere or with testing everywhere. But I would say the majority are kind of falling in that middle mark where they're sending to some and not to others. And then lastly, there was a question about the admissions data from this year. I will be hosting another webinar. I'm going to send that out later this week on June 15th in the morning, more for parents, but students are welcome to listen to the recording. But it's going to be really a reflection on the admissions, the application process this year and kind of what we saw as counselors. I will have a representative with me from College Kickstart. If you haven't been on College Kickstart, it's an excellent resource. All of the data that's in SCORE is also in College Kickstart, but you can analyze the data at a little bit of a higher level. It's also a great way to help you get organized for the application process. So if you're not on College Kickstart, juniors can just search their email, welcome to College Kickstart, and click on the link. It's very easy to access. Parents can't get on their own, so students need to log on directly. But the data from this year will be uploaded to College Kickstart next week, so you'll actually be able to start seeing the data from this year. The data will be uploaded to SCORE by the end of June, so that'll be accessible over the summer. And then lastly, the college book that is usually in high demand, that will be in print by the second week in June. We do distribute the college book to the local libraries, so if you wanted to, you could get your hands on it over the summer at one of the libraries, but if not, we'll have them in the media center in early September. I think we've answered most of the questions. Any last minute comments from the panelists? All right, well, thank you. This is the first time we've ever done this. This time of year, we always do an alumni return day in the fall. That's always a huge success, but I just love that you're all here this evening and, interested in giving back to the current junior class. So thank you for taking time out of your evening. It was great to see all of you. Enjoy the last week and a half on your internship and senior projects. And we'll see all of you at graduation rehearsal. And thanks for everybody for attending. And like I said, I'll send out this recording by the end of the week. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.